Hello, fellow artists. My name is Linda Riddle, and it's a good time for art. In our last class, we made collages using recycled objects we found around the house. Collages are generally two-dimensional, which is a fancy way of saying flat. Okay, sometimes there are some exceptions, like this collage here that has a little bottle cap poking out into space. Maybe some of your collages had string or bits of paper that poked out a little bit. But a lot of times, collages are completely two-dimensional, like this one made from a recycled painting. If we look at this piece of cardboard, that is two-dimensional. It's got height, it's got width, but it doesn't have any depth. Today, we are moving into a whole new dimension, the third dimension. We'll be starting on some sculptures. Let's look at this piece of cardboard again. Right now, it's two-dimensional. If I bend it like this, suddenly it's three-dimensional. It has height, it has width, but it also has depth. Sculptures are always three-dimensional. We're going to start today by exploring something called relief sculpture. Relief sculpture is a type of sculpture in which objects and figures project from a wall or other background surface. This type of sculpture has been around since prehistoric times, when animals and figures were carved into the walls of caves. During the civilizations of the ancient world, reliefs were common on the stone surfaces of buildings in Egypt, Assyria, and other Middle Eastern cultures. Most of the early relief sculptures were low reliefs, which means the sculpture projects just slightly from the background. High relief sculpture became more common in classical Greece. Relief sculptures continued to be used in architecture through the ages. They were often used on the walls of churches and temples to tell religious stories. Long ago, very few people could read, so the sculptures helped them learn about their religion. One of the most famous stone relief sculptures of the 20th century is the Mount Rushmore National Memorial, where the faces of 4 American presidents were carved into the mountain. Not long after the sculptures at Mount Rushmore were completed, an artist named Louise Nevelson was beginning to gain recognition in the United States. She created gigantic relief sculptures using objects she found on the streets of New York. Another name for this kind of sculpture is assemblage. It is art made by assembling different objects, often scavenged by the artist. Nevelson's assemblages were abstract. She was not making a picture. She was exploring form and shadow. Her favorite material was scrap wood. After assembling all the pieces together, she would paint the entire sculpture one color. Another word for one color is monochromatic. Using a single color helped pull the many pieces of the sculpture together into a unified work of art. Louise Nevelson continued to create sculptures well into her 80s. This wonderful portrait shows how she used her wardrobe as an expression of her artistry. So when I make my relief sculpture, I'm going to make sure that I have a sturdy base because I'm going to be sticking a lot of things on this. So it really wouldn't work to use a piece of construction paper. I've got some heavy cardboard that I cut out from a cardboard box. Also, I was looking carefully at some of Louise Nevelson's sculptures, and I noticed that she seemed to use a lot of boxes that she contained other shapes inside of. So I started collecting a lot of little boxes and other sorts of shapes that I might be able to put smaller objects inside of when I do my relief sculpture. I am going to paint my sculpture white, so I decided to go ahead and paint the cardboard that I'm going to be using as a base white as well, because when I paint it, I'm not sure I'll be able to get the white paint into all the little nooks and crannies, and so it'd be good to have that background already white. And actually, I've started to stick things on there. What I'm going to do is just try to arrange all these different box shapes that I have in different ways and figure out what works. Let's see. Kind of don't like that there because it's going to cut the whole thing in half. This is the kind of artwork you could continue to work on for several days at a time, just layering and layering different shapes on until you just really have a concentrated collection of things. Louise Nevelson worked for years on some of her relief sculptures. So I'm just going to keep adding to this bit by bit until I'm satisfied. And then when I come to that point, I'm going to paint it. If you want to do a monochromatic relief sculpture without having to use spray paint, one thing you can do is paint a lot of the elements of the sculpture before you stick them together. I'm going to just paint the base of this one right now. And it's good to use a color that's very opaque. What I mean by that is the color is thick enough that you can't really see through it when you paint it on. If you tried to, I'm using tempera paint right now. If you tried to do this with watercolor, that would not really work because watercolor is transparent and the brown paper would just, the brown cardboard would just show through. What you can do though is collect, say we're going to do a blue monochromatic relief sculpture, collect other things that are already blue. So I've got lots of plastic things, even a little glass bottle, and we'll try using those in the relief sculpture as soon as all of these other things dry. Here's the relief sculpture that I was working on earlier. As you can see, I've filled in all these boxes with lots of different shapes and forms, and it's actually quite crowded. I could always add more, but I'm going to stop for now. I think it's interesting looking, but I also think it just kind of looks like a big jumble. It doesn't really hold together. So I'm going to try what Louise Nevelson did with her relief sculptures and paint this all one color and see if I can't unify this composition. Spray painting is a job for grown-ups. If you are a young artist, ask an adult to spray paint your sculpture. These paints have toxic fumes which are unhealthy to breathe. I always work outside and wear a mask and eye protection to stay safe. So here's my relief sculpture or assemblage now that I've spray painted it all one color, and I think it really helped. It seems to hold together much more visually, and also I can notice lots of little textures and forms that weren't so obvious before, so I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. I'll show you another one that I did. Here is one that I sprayed matte black. Louise Nevelson did a lot of her sculptures with a matte black paint, and it really is very dramatic with the shadows and the textures as well. Finally, I want to show you one that I did where I did not have to use spray paint at all. And that is this one here. What I did was I painted all the cardboard bits blue before I ever stuck anything together, let the paint dry. I also collected a lot of other blue objects because I wanted it to be monochromatic, and came up with this composition, which I think is really fun. I kind of enjoy the fact that while it is all blue, I have different shades of blue, so that gives it a little extra interest. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Don't forget to send pictures of your relief sculptures that you made. I can't wait to see what they look like. Next week, we'll be doing freestanding sculptures. I've already started experimenting with that, and it should be lots of fun. Keep saving your recycled items because we'll be using those for our next sculpture project. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. You can do that by clicking on the little thumbs up symbol that's below the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Well, that's it for today, but remember, it's always a good time for art.